Iran is not just mourning a leader, it is trying to prove the system still works, and that is the part almost everyone is missing. Because when a country loses the man who sat at the top of its power structure for decades, the funeral is not only a funeral, it becomes a test of loyalty, a test of fear, a test of who is really in control. And right now, Iran is walking through that test in front of the entire world. Massive crowds are filling the streets. State media is showing grief, unity, and discipline. Officials are trying to send one message again and again. The republic is still standing, but look closer, because behind the black flags, the chants, and the carefully arranged images, there is a question Tehran does not want the world asking too loudly. If the system is so stable, why does it look so nervous? That question matters. Because Iran's most dangerous moment is not simply that Ali Khamenei is gone. It is that nobody can be completely sure what comes next. The first sign was not the funeral itself, it was the absence. Mojtaba Khamenei, the man expected by many to inherit his father's power, was not seen in the way the world expected. And in a system built on symbols, absence is never just absence. Imagine a family business where the founder dies. The workers gather, the managers give speeches, the logo stays on the building, but the person everyone thinks will take over does not appear at the front door. Maybe he is preparing, maybe he is protected, maybe he is injured, maybe he is being challenged. Nobody outside the inner circle knows, and that is exactly the problem, because power hates empty space. The moment a throne looks empty, every faction begins to calculate. The Revolutionary Guards calculate, the clerics calculate, the parliament calculates, the military calculates, foreign enemies calculate, and ordinary people calculate too. They ask the quiet question every government fears: is this still untouchable? That is why this funeral is bigger than grief. It is a public performance of control. Every crowd shot matters, every official who appears matters, every official who does not appear matters even more. Iran's leaders are trying to turn mourning into strength. They want the world to see millions of people and think, this system cannot be shaken. But the world is not only watching the crowd. The world is watching the gaps. And the biggest gap is leadership. Who gives the final order now? Who can reverse a dangerous decision? Who can stop a war from spreading? Who can tell the hardliners to wait? Who can tell the diplomats to sign? Because Iran is not facing one crisis, it is facing three at the same time: a succession crisis, a nuclear crisis, and a maritime crisis at the Strait of Hormuz. Any one of these would be enough to shake a government. All three together create something much more dangerous. Think of it like a car speeding down a mountain road. One tire is damaged, the steering is loose, and now the driver may have changed. That is not just a bad moment. That is the moment everyone in the car stops talking. The nuclear track is the first pressure point. The United States and Iran have been talking again. Publicly, both sides use careful words: progress, technical discussions, de-escalation, stability. But there is a strange detail in the middle of it. The nuclear issue, the issue that supposedly explains the entire crisis, has not always been the clear center of the latest talks. That matters. Because if the talks are mostly about managing shipping, sanctions, and short-term calm, then the deeper question may still be unresolved. What happens to Iran's nuclear program? What happens to inspection access? What happens to the material and infrastructure nobody trusts? That is where the real tension lives. Diplomacy can sound calm from the outside, but diplomacy after a war is often like people whispering inside a house that is still smoking. The fire may be out, but nobody knows if the walls are safe, and if the walls collapse, everyone will say the same thing. We should have looked more carefully. This is the first open door in the story. Iran may want economic relief. Washington may want a deal. The Gulf may want shipping to move. Europe and Asia may want oil markets to stay calm. But Israel may look at the same situation and see something completely different. A delay, a trick, a pause that lets Iran recover. And that is why this moment is so dangerous, because the countries involved do not agree on what success means. For Washington, success may mean avoiding another major war. For Iran, success may mean surviving the shock and keeping enough leverage to negotiate from strength. For Israel, success may mean making sure Iran can never rebuild what was hit. Those goals overlap a little, but they also collide. And when goals collide, one dramatic event can break the whole frame. Now look at the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway is not just a line on a map, it is one of the world's economic choke points. Oil moves through it, gas moves through it, insurance markets watch it, navies watch it. Every government with a fuel bill watches it. If Hormuz becomes unstable, the crisis does not stay in the Middle East. It travels. It travels to gas stations. It travels to shipping costs. It travels to food prices. It travels into elections. It travels into the kitchen table. That is why Iran's attempt to assert control over shipping routes is not a small technical move. It is leverage. It is Iran saying, even wounded, we still sit beside a switch the world cannot ignore. This is the second open door. Can Iran use Hormuz as pressure without triggering a wider response? That is the dangerous game. Because choke points are powerful, but they are also risky. A country can use them to get attention, but if it pushes too hard, it gives other countries a reason to come closer. More patrols, more mine clearing, more escorts, more mistakes. And wars often do not begin with the grand speech. They begin with one ship, one warning, one radar lock, one commander making a decision with incomplete information. That is the nightmare hidden inside the headlines. Iran wants to project strength. But projecting strength while your leadership is unsettled is like raising your voice while standing on cracked ice. It may scare people. It may also make the ice break faster.
Now here is the part that makes this different from older Iran crises. In the past, the world often looked at Tehran and saw a hard system with a clear center. You could dislike it. You could fear it. You could sanction it. But you knew where the center was. Now the center is harder to see. That changes everything. When a system has a visible leader, outside powers can send messages. They can threaten. They can offer deals. They can test red lines. But when the leader is gone, hidden, absent, or contested, every message becomes harder to read. Who receives it? Who answers it? Who can enforce it? This is the third open door. Maybe Iran's institutions close ranks. Maybe the Revolutionary Guards become more dominant. Maybe the clerical establishment tries to preserve balance. Maybe the new leadership appears and shows control. Or maybe factions begin quietly fighting over the future while pretending everything is normal. That last version is the most dangerous, because public unity and private panic can exist at the same time. A government can hold a giant funeral in the morning and have a power struggle at night. The crowd does not prove the argument is settled, it only proves the cameras were turned on. And this is where the emotional part comes in. It is easy to look at Iran as a chessboard. Supreme leader, guards, nuclear sites, oil routes, talks, sanctions. But real people live under all of it. Families who do not know whether the next month brings calm or more fear. Young people who have lived their whole lives inside pressure they did not choose. Workers watching prices. Parents watching sons. Students watching the internet. People who understand that when powerful men test each other, ordinary people often pay first. That is the honest part. Geopolitics can make human life look like a map animation. Arrows move. Ships move. Borders glow red. But on the ground, uncertainty is not an animation. It is a mother wondering if school opens. It is a shop owner wondering if prices double. It is a young person wondering if the future just closed again. And that is why this moment matters. Not because it is dramatic, because it is unstable. The funeral will end, the speeches will fade, the flags will come down, but the questions will remain. Who is really running Iran? Can the new leadership control the hardliners? Will the United States keep talks alive? Will Israel trust the talks enough to wait? Will Hormuz stay open? And will Iran choose survival through compromise or survival through confrontation? These are not separate questions. They are one question wearing different masks. Can Iran absorb the death of its most powerful figure without turning its weakness into a regional crisis? That is the fourth open door, and it closes very soon, because leadership transitions do not wait forever. Markets do not wait forever. Navies do not wait forever. Negotiators do not wait forever. At some point, symbols must become decisions. Someone has to appear, someone has to speak, someone has to sign, someone has to give the order not to escalate, or someone gives the opposite order. That is why Iran has entered its most dangerous moment yet. Not because collapse is guaranteed, it is not. Not because war is guaranteed, it is not. But because too many dangerous systems are moving at the same time, and the one thing that normally keeps them controlled, clear leadership, is exactly what the world is now questioning. A funeral can show power, but it can also reveal fear. A crowd can prove loyalty, but it can also hide uncertainty. A state can look strongest on the very day it feels most fragile, and that is what the world is watching now. Not just a coffin moving through Tehran, not just chants in the street, not just another round of talks. The world is watching a regime try to turn loss into control before its enemies, its rivals, and its own factions decide that the control is weaker than it looks. Iran is not just mourning a leader, it is auditioning for survival. And the next move may decide whether this becomes a transition, a negotiation, or the beginning of a much larger crisis.